Jason Ganas coming at you from Safeway Pest Management. I'm here with Josh Koenig, the technical director. How you doing, Josh?
Doing good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. We're here to talk to you about stinging insects, and I have 8 questions and then a couple bonus questions. Are you ready, Josh?
I am.
Okay, can you tell me a joke?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
How do you make a waterbed more bouncy?
How?
Add spring water.
Okay. Okay. All right. So my first question is, how do you get rid of stinging insects?
When we come out and we deal with stinging insects, we do a liquid application directly to the hive. It'll take care of the larva, the queen, and any of the other workers that are exposed to that nest.
Okay. What about if you can't see the nest? I'm in my yard and they're going in and out of an opening.
They're going in and out of the hole in the ground or a hollowed out log. You're most likely dealing with yellow jackets at that point. And at that point, you're probably dealing with August or September. And the nest at that point in time is going to be 14 to roughly 1,600 yellow jackets. Not something I'd recommend the typical average homeowner try and take care of on their own.
Oh, that's pretty dangerous. So I guess, we get a lot of calls, and I'm going to ask you the question, why can't I just go ahead and plug the hole? If they're going in and out of that hole, just plug it and that would take care of it.
Well, what you're dealing with is a living creature, and when yellow jackets build inside of a wall, they're not just going to let you plug up the front door and let them all starve to death and die. They're going to find a way out. So typically, yellow jackets will start eating the drywall itself, and then you end up having that 14 to 1,600 hornets come out inside of the house, and when they get into the interior of a home, they usually get highly aggressive, far more than they are outside.
Wow. Does that happen a lot, or?
It happens a lot more than people would think. A lot of people think they can just seal them up and they're going to go away, but they're living there. That's their home, and they got a whole big family they got to feed.
Okay. All right. So I guess when Safeway comes out and treats for the nest, how long do I have to wait for that nest to come down or to be taken care of?
Typically, I advise leaving the nest up for at least 7 days. The scouts can stay away for several days at a time. Everybody's had that happen where they end up with a wasp or something that gets into the back of the car and they lock all the doors the next morning. They think that it's still dead and then it's still there. You just transported that wasp a whole extra distance away from where it's normally living. And it just wants to try and get back home. So we usually recommend leaving that nest up for 7 days to make sure all the females get back to the nest, get exposed to the chemical, and that way you're making sure the whole problem's taken care of and they don't rebuild.
Okay. So once that nest is dead, does Safeway come out and knock the nest down?
No, we don't do that unless you were to call us up and ask us to come out and take care of that, and that would be an additional charge.
Okay. But if I'm a homeowner and I see the nest and I don't like it, it's an eyesore to me, I can knock it down on my own?
Absolutely. After 7 days, go right ahead.
Okay. Another question we have, we've had a lot of calls here about ground bees. What can you tell me about those?
Well, if you're seeing ground bees, again, it kind of depends on the time of year that we're dealing with. August or September, that's probably going to be yellow jackets, but at springtime right now, there's a lot of solitary wasps, solitary bees that are all looking to, create their next generation right now, and they're looking for bare soil. So when they find that bare soil, they excavate little tunnels and they lay their larvae in there. And a lot of those species paralyze other insect species, take those insects and drop them into those tunnels, cover them back up, and then the larvae eats them, and then they emerge later. A lot of the ground species, although they don't pollinate as much as your honeybees do, they're still beneficial to the environment. And even the wasps, a lot of them help keep other pest problems under control. So unless they're really posing a risk, you really don't have to worry about them or dealing with them. The only time I've really seen a need for it is if they're actively going in by like a volleyball court, and you don't want to start agitating a bunch of ground wasps playing volleyball.
Yeah, or playgrounds, right? Too
Correct.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So I guess we're talking about, you said something about solitary and social. What does that mean?
Well, a solitary wasp, we have a lot of different species. I mean, that you have cicada killers, which are very, very large wasps. And those females will go out and find cicadas when they emerge, and they end up killing their prey. You have mud daubers and potter's wasps, a lot of different species of wasp that get that really thin waist between the abdomen and the thorax. And those species will often end up taking spiders, and they paralyze the spider, encase them inside of the mud, and you'll end up either where somebody threw like a ball of mud at the side of your house, or it looks like flutes were created on there. Those are some of those different species that'll paralyze spiders, and then they use the paralyzed spider to feed their young.
Wow, that's pretty great.
Your
Pretty good.
social insects are going to be the yellow jackets, bald-faced hornets, things like that, even Palistes wasps, which is a much smaller scale. But when you actively have multiple stinging insects living in one hive.
Okay. So social is multiple, and then obviously the solitary is the single.
Yes.
Okay, got it. What about the venom? We had a question about a venom of social insects. Is there a difference? Like, is there one that maybe stings harder, or would painful as far as pain tolerance and all that stuff?
A lot of stinging insects have very, very different pain tolerances. So like the two most common that would sting anybody in Wisconsin, we have both the yellow jacket and the bald-faced hornet, which if you look at the Schmidt pain index, rank as a 2. And the top one on that is actually the bullet ant, which thankfully we don't have here. But there's also a guy called Coyote Peterson who's been testing the sting of multiple insects around the world. And when he's been doing this, the bullet ant is no longer number one. I mean, according to the Schmidt pain index, it is. But you've got the tarantula hawk, you've got the executioner wasp. There's a lot of other insects that we're finding out have a much more painful sting than some of the other ones that we've originally been exposed to more often.
Wow, I didn't even know there was an index like that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess that concludes the 8 questions, but some bonus questions I have is, does Safeway treat for honeybees?
No, Safeway does not treat for honeybees, and I honestly can't think of any pest control company that would in good faith of taking care of a customer, because if you treat a honeybee nest, you're going to kill the honeybees, then the honey isn't going to be taken care of well, and that's going to start to drip and rot and cause a bigger problem, and eventually it's just going to attract another honeybee swarm to that location, so you're never actively getting rid of the problem.
Well, plus they're hugely beneficial, right? I mean, more than like wasps or hornets or stuff like that. Yeah. I guess, and then have you ever been stung by a stinging insect?
I've been stung 37 times by a yellow jacket nest once when I was a young child, and since then, probably a good 20 to 30 more. So I've taken lessons.
I guess you definitely know if you're allergic, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that concludes our session here. I guess next week I wanted to let you guys know we'll be talking about the murder hornets and all the rage about that. We'll be asking Josh some questions, and he'll be submitting some things as far as that goes, and also COVID-19 and the way that the bats are being affected, may or may not be affecting the United States. Is that right, Josh?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds great, Josh. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for taking the time with us today to discuss stinging insects.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, see ya.